going to bring 25,000 refugees to Canada, and we will hold to that commitment.
Welcome back. The Liberal government, as you know, has committed to bringing over 25,000 Syrian refugees by the end of the year. But questions are being raised as to whether those refugees could perhaps pose a security risk. One of the attackers in Paris appears to have entered Europe posing as a refugee from Syria. Several U.S. states now say they won't accept any Syrians. And here at home, Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall has appealed to the Prime Minister to at very least slow down the process. So is increased security screening a legitimate concern? Will or can Saskatchewan refuse to accept Syrian refugees on the Prime Minister's timeline? Joining me now from Regina, Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall. Nice to see you, Premier.
Hi, Rosie.
Why did you decide to send this letter to the Prime Minister today?
Well, two reasons, really. The deadline, I think, is problematic. Not the fact that we want to accept refugees. The province of Saskatchewan, as a result of this issue really coming to the fore in the election campaign, we're already taking more. I think about 600 is the number, and certainly want to add more to that in terms of refugees from Syria. But I don't recall a time when a major refugee intake like this was driven by a deadline, and I think that's the concern. And I think everybody would forgive the Prime Minister if he were to say, look, the campaign promise was about a deadline. Let's make it about the refugees, but let's also make sure we get it right in terms of security and also settlement issues. And prior to the events in Paris, which I do think have caused some discussion and debate, notwithstanding the provenance or the countries of origin of all of those who did this terrible thing, I do think it's caused some debate. But even prior to that, you know, we were talking to our mayors across Saskatchewan of the major cities and some settlement groups who were just worried about the timelines here. We have 45 days until there's a huge influx of refugees, and we just have to make sure that we get this right, both from a security standpoint and a settlement standpoint. Our letter today was to the Prime Minister. If there was a reevaluation on the deadline, that might be a positive thing for the process, and to continue to build strong Canadian support for what we're trying to do. Okay,
but the timing is something I guess that people are questioning. Would you have been sending this letter if these attacks hadn't happened? Is it mostly fueled by your concerns around security?
I was asked that this morning. I honestly don't know. We were gathering concerns from settlement groups and mayors about the settlement issues around the numbers. We were reaching out. Our minister was discussing things with federal ministers, asking questions around where had they identified in Saskatchewan that the refugees could be housed, for example, and there just weren't any clear answers. I don't blame, by the way, the federal government for not having clear answers to this. They were just sworn in, which kind of goes to the point. But I will say that the events in Paris and in Beirut, and now the investigations. There's one in Germany today where the head of their federal police is talking about 10 individuals that are under investigation as potentially terrorists that were part of sort of refugee groups hiding amongst refugees. And so because of all of that, I think it is reasonable for the Prime Minister to say, you know what, we're going to do what Canada always does. We're going to welcome refugees to our country. We're just going to make sure we take whatever time's necessary to get it right. From a security standpoint, but also from a settlement standpoint.
I have spoken to people when we were at the height of this conversation, sort of in the election campaign, about security and screening and all these different concerns. And Rick Hillier, for instance, suggested that Canada could go after the most vulnerable. We could say, well, we'll just bring women and children and the elderly, and then we won't have the same kind of security concerns. Would that sort of alleviate any of the concerns that you have around security?
Those are options that should be on the table.
Yeah.
Obviously, we should try to help as many people as we can who desperately need the help. But we need to ensure the security of the country. We know that the previous process, arguably, in terms of screening was too long. I think you and I actually had that discussion. Yeah. But now it's been dramatically shortened up to effectively a couple of months. And I don't know, we've asked this question, I don't know what steps have been sort of identified as luxury steps. I don't know what steps we might be missing now. And I just think it's reasonable, and I think Canadians would support the Prime Minister if he said, look, we do want to welcome these refugees. We're not talking about in sort of an indefinite delay. We're talking about just making sure we have all of these issues right, not just around security, but around settlement.
So if you don't hear substantive answers from the Prime Minister around this, reassurance, for instance, on the security issue, do you say, well, then forget it, Saskatchewan's not taking anybody?
No, I'm not sure we have standing to even do that, and we would want to work however we could to to cooperate and help with the settlement issues. But I think that is a federal decision. I don't think the provinces have a veto. Neither should we, arguably, but we don't in that regard. And our settlement groups would be working with the federal government. There is a federal support for refugees in terms of any health and social services or related costs for a year. And then after that, the provinces are on the hook, as you know. We're not on the hook, but it's up to provinces to provide that support.
So what's the timeline then? What to you is reasonable? An additional 6 months, another year? What makes sense?
Well, I think if the federal government were to step back and say, we're going to just have a look at the specific steps that we maybe collapsed so we could get into this 45-day window or 2-month window, and determine if any of those steps perhaps shouldn't be omitted in the process. Maybe it's a matter of months, or I would hope that it would be. So action could happen more quickly. I'm not in a position to say that because I don't know which steps perhaps have been omitted.
You're suggesting that some have been omitted. We don't know that to be true.
Well, we've asked the question, what has been potentially omitted or changed about the screening process, because we know something's been changed. We're going from years to a couple of months in terms of the wait time or the process. Yeah. Obviously, years aren't acceptable, but do we have blessed assurance that this is the right timeline? And if we don't, then I think Canadians would say, let's get this right. Let's welcome people that need our help.
Sure.
But in this case, Rosie, it's very interesting. I think governments and organizations in general would say, hey, if there's only one miss out of 25,000, that's pretty good, actually. In this case, is it? Is it? We just saw what happened last Friday, and we just have to be very, very diligent. And I'm sure federal officials are, but if they identify a little bit more time, we should be able to provide it to them as Canadians, provide them that leeway, notwithstanding what was said in an election campaign.
One more question. I think we're up to now 7 American states, including Texas, who have said we'll take no refugees, none of them. What do you make of that kind of response?
Well, as I said, I don't think it's even a possibility in Canada, nor maybe should it be. This is the decision of the national government, and we should work with whatever the decision the national government makes. We can, as I think we've done today, as some council, perhaps to be overcautious and very deliberate about it, and to err on that side of things. And we have done that, and we'll do that. When I see the Prime Minister next Monday, I think we all meet together. I'll offer that up. I hope we also get a briefing. I asked for that in the letter as well, so we can also report back to our people at home. But Saskatchewan's always been there. We're accepting more now as we speak as a result of this issue coming to the fore, as I've said, and we've been there in the past and we'll be there in the future. Okay,
Premier, I hope on Monday we can speak again or in the lead up to Paris, because I'd like to talk to you about climate change as well. So let's put that on the shelf for the next time. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks.